first of all, the question is, can you talk a little bit about how gangs are today versus how they were 20 or 40 years ago in terms of, I mean, the question is, how is it as bad? And I think the answer is it's as bad, possibly, but differently. So,
Okay, well, first of all, thank you guys so much for having me. When I heard about this opportunity, I was more than excited to jump on and do this because in the process of making that film, it was such a passion project. And in the moment, gang activity was very calm. So a lot of people were asking me, like, well, why are you making this project talking about this issue if it's not happening? And the answer to that, before I jump into your question, is I was greatly impacted by gang violence growing up, and a lot of my peers and friends, we feel the effects still to this day. And if I just felt like it was something that had to be touched on and discussed because it was so detrimental to a lot of us growing up here. And this was a tool that gives people a great insight of the situation, you know what I mean? And this film also came about because when I was working for PUSD, I was brought on as the district-wide intervention specialist, where I was going around to all the middle schools and high schools and creating support, talking about gang violence and awareness. And I was very excited about that job because I knew a lot about the subject, and this is my community, and I took it to heart to be able to create something. To make a long story short, budget cuts came down. I ended up losing my job. And when I lost my job, I was so hurt because I didn't want my efforts to die with that job. So, what I had to do is, after kind of recovering and healing from the shocking loss of employment, I thought, how could I leverage what I know and who I know into something impactful? And after weeks and weeks of just thinking about it, it just hit me out of nowhere. Maybe it was one of those God given moments, but it was like, oh my God, I can create a film. Um, we love media. Everyone likes to consume something. We like movies. We love documentaries. So it's like, how can we catch the attention of people that might be engaging, but also encompass so much and so many others to be a part of it? And doing this film was the perfect way of bringing all this information and people in collaboration together to be a piece. So now this piece will outlive me. Now we created something that is here, regardless if you like it, if you didn't, indifferent, impartial, it's here. It's a piece and it's alive. And I think that's what I'm more excited about. So now I'll get into the first question, which was, how is it today versus back then? Well, obviously, when I think about it, I was a younger guy then, right? So I think it was more impactful to me because I was a young guy in the midst of that era where I saw gang members at school, I saw gang members on the streets, I saw gang members on the bus, I saw gang members on the parks at the parks, right? So because I'm older now, I have more control over my space and I'm a professional person. That means I'm usually not in these areas anymore, right? My evolution and my growth has set me aside to where I'm not in spaces where this activity happens, but I'm still well knowledgeable of it because I keep my ear to the streets. I mentor youth. I work for the school district. I work for the boys club. So I keep my ears to the streets. And what I'm realizing is these things are still happening. And in recent times, it is just as bad as it was back then because it has kicked up to a place that most Altadenians never knew about, to the point where now it's a conversation. And it's kicked up in Pasadena so to where people are starting to say, oh my God, this is reminding me of the 90s back when I was in high school. So we're at a place in time right now where it is back on, it is back happening. And we got to jump back in as a community, kind of like figure out how to help die this stuff down, because now all of a sudden a lot of youth are back to getting killed and getting shot, and innocent people are getting shot. And I'm just on my Facebook yesterday and the last week, I've been seeing funeral after funeral after funeral, people going live at funerals. And it's starting to sadden you when you realize that your community brothers and sisters are greatly impacted, and you see parents and community members. Like for me, what really hurt was those string of murders in like 97, 2017, 18. Like these were kids that I mentored that went to school. I worked at Longfellow. Like these were my kids. Like I taught these kids. I hung out with these kids. I played basketball with these kids. These are my kids. And then you hear about them dead in the street. It does something to you. And it just makes you want to do something about it. But just to wrap up the first question, yeah, we're in a time where it's back to what it used to be. And I think the only difference is like now I'm a grown man looking at it versus being in the core age group in which it's happening. You know what I mean? But like I said, because I mentor the youth, because I work at a school, because I work for the Boys Club, I'm constantly hearing about the little things, the little beefs that are happening, the rivalries that are going on, um, and the uptick of violence is becoming very present and very scary.
Are there programs to help parents with through the schools when the school and or the parent identifies their kid or student as heading toward trouble?
I mean, I think there's lots of programs, um, but I don't know if there's any that address gang violence. The program that I was working with, I was so excited because to me, that was the first time the district took an approach to talk about this topic specifically. I never recall any program in PUSD's history that touched on gang violence directly. Maybe it's built into some other elements, maybe this, but I have never seen it. So when I came along, I was excited to be the person to bring that, and I was disappointed to see that it went away. There's lots of programs. There's mentoring programs which are good. There's some community programs around, like Brother Chris Finney, when the video was saying, there's lots of re-entry programs through the Flint Ridge reintegration program. There's lots of programs around the city, but somehow we got to start getting these. We got to start funneling the right people to these programs, because for some reason we always hear about these programs, but then they're gone or they weren't attended. But the thing that I have to say is we have to find sustainable programming, because what I noticed about not just PUSD but a lot of community programs is like they get funding for a year. So it's
Mm.
like you put this energy into galvanizing these people to come be a part of this program and getting parents on board, and then you launch the program, and then a year later, after all that work, program gone. Now, okay, what's the next program? Then the next program comes in. We galvanize everybody. We bring everybody together. People are tuning in. Kids are starting to enroll. Boom, uh, funding is over. Now it's like we're constantly creating and creating and creating when we can just create something and sustain it through the funding. But it seems like funding is always fluctuating, so there's nothing that's super consistent all the time. And another thing that I would like to see is some programming for the people who are between 18 and 25, because a lot of kids in elementary and middle school and high school have access to these programs because they're at a school, and you have people governing that may see that something's wrong and make referrals to mental health, counseling, putting kids in mentoring programs, sports. So you may have some intervention or prevention happening within because you're at school. But what happens when this kid who was already teeter-tottering on the edge graduates high school and then still is undecided about what he's going to do for college, didn't really think about college, doesn't really know much about it. No, nobody in his house has went to college. He doesn't have any idea how to fill out school FAFSA forms or to go to PCC and register himself. And this kid is now just floating around trying to figure it out. There's a lot of temptation out here in the streets. And if we don't have no guidance for those coming out of that, it's easy to find the wrong thing, but it seems like it's starting to become harder to find the things that will help you if you just aren't in tune with those resources that are available.
We've been in this pandemic now for a year with our schools being closed for that long. It'll be a
That
year
does
next
not
month.
help either.
Yeah, so that was what I was going to ask is, you know, there is a possibility that younger grades are going to return to school this year, but maybe the odds are 50-50. Whether or not middle schools and high schools are going to go back is less likely. So how has the pandemic, it sort of seems like we have a lot of people that are home. And
Yeah.
so I think that that when we see violence in our neighborhoods, it's because people are home and therefore the violence finds them if that's what's going to happen, right? They're not going to be at a park or somewhere else.
Yeah. I think everybody being home definitely does not help in this matter because we do so much online now that the youth is tapping in. Like a lot of some of these things that are happening because people are posting on their feeds where they're at, where they're doing, what they're doing, and people are connecting with them in negative ways to engage in some of this activity we just discussed. um, Speaking from just observing my friends, I don't have kids, observing my friends kids doing homeschool, they're so unengaged, they're like out of it. Like I know one day I had covered lunch at the boys club, and I'm just watching the kids work. And some kids are super in tune, and then some kids that really struggle, like they just need constant reassurance, constant guidance, constant checking on, constant helping them with the next thing, constant navigating the next assignment. And everyone doesn't have someone to sit over them to guide them through this process at every hour. So I'm watching my buddy's kids, and one of his daughters is very sustainable. She's doing very well. She likes school. Then the other daughter, she's literally knocked out, sleep, head back, bored out of her mind. And I can just imagine how, you know, how the great impact of this is going to play out. Like we probably won't see the full impact of this for years down the line. We're not going to see it. Like, you know what I'm saying? And then another tragedy is one of the students that I governed, that I worked with at Longfellow, like I just saw not too long ago, like her daughter committed suicide, and it's like the saddest thing ever. And it's like this is terrible. Like kids are missing hanging with their friends, kids are missing socializing, kids are missing their teachers, kids are just missing playing outside, kids are just really missing being kids and hanging out and being a part and sharing space and time and with friends. So we're going to see a lot of depression. We're going to see we're starting to see suicides amongst young kids, and then we're going to see some learning gaps. We already talk about achievement gaps between the African American kids and the Latino children. Now we're really going to start hearing the term achievement gap because kids are falling behind, plain and simple. Period. Some of these kids have not logged on since the pandemic.
Yes, yes, it's true. It's true. And
Yeah.
it's creating a lot of mental health problems for younger and younger children as well. On the flip side of that, we've got children who were bullied at school, who have learning disabilities, for whom being at school was a challenge in and of itself, who are thriving being at home and having none of that distraction.
For
So
sure.
it is a double-edged sword, and I think it really will help inform how we view education going forward. But definitely the loss of the structure of school, having a place to go, the routine of getting up, getting dressed, having breakfast, getting to school on
Mhm.
time, all those things.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, someone asked if the resource guide will have places to get involved, and yes, it will. We posted it earlier. It's linked in this chat, and you can see it here and refer to it again. We'll also email it out after this, so you'll be able to see it then. Someone says, great film. Decades ago, I imagined a program called Guilds, not Gangs. It seemed like the kind of program that is being asked for. It would invite everyone in the community to offer apprenticeship programs to kids at risk or in gangs in the form of old-fashioned guilds. Let's see. Steve knows what he's doing. Well done. Props.
Thank you.
Thanks for recording this.
Let
Go
me
ahead.
jump in there on that. I didn't know what I was doing. I know what I wanted to do. This was my first stab at making a film. I have no background, no skill set, and really no desire until now to make a film. But because I was so gung-ho about it, because I lost my job, because I really wanted to create something impactful, I just really made it my mission to get up and do it and make it happen. And there was no excuse and there was no, I don't know. I like literally, we just did it. Like, you know,
Had to do it. Had to figure it out.
I felt like I had to do it. And because I didn't have a job, I woke up every morning. At the time, I didn't live in Pasadena. I live in Pasadena now. At the time, I lived in Pomona. I still woke up every morning, fought traffic to come to Pasadena to shoot this film as it was my job because it felt that serious to me. So, you know, calling people, arranging meetings, emailing, showing up at people's jobs. I mean, we really went hard on making this, and this was a passion project. The only thing we did a GoFundMe and raised a couple of grand, and then we sold T-shirts, and we did everything in our power to make this happen. But so go ahead, you can go to the next.
And I will say that you gave voice to people that are often not at the table or in the room where discussions around this topic are happening. And so I think it's so important that we hear directly from people and how they're affected directly.
Yeah, I think just to touch on that a little bit, that's what made this film so impactful is because we gave voices to the voiceless. And like you said, oftentimes when these grand discussions are being had, the people who've been impacted the most are never at the table. And this film really gives them a chance. It really gives all of us. How many of us have really sat next to a gang member to hear their perspective from top to bottom, how they felt, what they did, what they thought, what they feel they need? Like, not many of us will get those opportunities, and let alone them actually willing to give you the information. So this is a way for us to share perspectives and hear from each other, because just as like it's valuable from us to hear from them, it's just as valuable from them to hear from us. You know what I mean? So it's a two-way street.
For sure, for sure. Is Pasadena and LA County moving monies from police departments toward different services that can address these problems?
I don't know what they're doing, honestly. I don't really know. I would hope so. I know throughout the summer with all of the uprisings that took place, I know there was a big thing about defunding the police. Now, um, if the police is the majority of the city's budget, which it is, then I don't see anything wrong with shifting at least some of those funds into preventative measures. The police are important. They have a job to do, and they have a very dangerous job to do. But the issue is no one in this film viewed police as being the solution. So therefore, all those preventative things and giving you things to do and helping out and creating programs and mentorship and music programs and science programs and all these programs, these are going to be the things that over the long term create real sustainable change, and the change we want to see, which is, you know, reduce violence. And if any, like we would obviously know we don't want anyone to die or get killed in a violent way, but policing happens after something happens. Like once someone is shot, the police are dispatched. So we need to stop before someone is shot. We need to have kids thinking about their futures. We need to have people being accountable. We need to have the youth wanting to do positive activities, wanting to engage in good stuff, and wanting to do things they like. I know in the film, Brother Ruben, he was saying that it's important for kids to do the things that they want to do. Like we can't just create a program and make kids go. Like kids are different. Like the kid has to want to do it. Like, we have to create things, take inventory on the things kids like to do, and then build into the programming all of the skills, all of the fun, and make it a fun thing so the kids want to come, they want to learn. And on the back end, they don't even realize that they're getting the love, the nurture, you know what I mean? Because a common theme in the film is lack of supervision and lack of positive role models, right? So off top, we got to get those two things in place. We got to get positive role models in front of these kids, and we got to have some positive resources to go with it.
And I think, just speaking as a parent, that exposure is so important. Kids, as they're growing, don't know what they like. They don't know. And when they don't know, it's very easy to fill that void with the wrong kinds of things. But to give them exposure to things that they might be interested in or can figure out if they're interested in is really important.
Yeah.
Yes, the film is available for future viewing. If you want to share it with others that couldn't join, we will put it, it's on YouTube. We'll put that in the chat. Thank you for this important film and the opportunity to screen it. We all have work to do as a society and as a community. Quick question. The end credit song is great. Shout out to Bonnie Bees. Can you tell us what the song is called, artist, and how we get a copy?
Actually, that song is I fully produced the soundtrack to this project, and it is available on all streaming platforms. It is called Pasadena Documentary Soundtrack, and it's available on my website also, where you can check out the whole album, or you can just go check out that song, or you can just listen to it for free, or you could download it and purchase it. It's up to you, but it's definitely available for you to enjoy. Um, yeah, so if you go to my website, you will see that there's a music tab, and if you scroll, you will see the Pasadena Documentary Soundtrack. I'm very proud of that soundtrack because I've been producing music a long time, and the music really goes hand in hand with the vibe of the film.
Mhm.
And I honestly feel like I had a Dr. Dre moment, when Dr. Dre made Compton, you know what I'm saying? He made the soundtrack to go with his film.
Yep.
I made Pasadena, and I got the Pasadena soundtrack to go with it. And they're all local. Most of them are local artists from Pasadena.
Chloe just dropped the link to the documentary in the chat. So because the chat will go away when we are done with this Q&A, you may want to copy and paste it into your browser now so you have it. Someone else said it would be great to see a highly organized small business mentorship education program with startup business support for adults coming out of gangs. Is there such a thing that current business owners can contribute time to?
I don't know if there's a thing, but that's what me and my buddies were talking about. We were talking about teaching kids entrepreneurship. Like, one thing that we learned in this whole process of making this film is launching our clothing business and it becoming successful over these years of doing this. And we were talking about teaching kids how to do certain things, like teaching about business, teaching about creativity, and then teaching about the physical, tangible things to do to create your clothing brand. And then, because I produce music, I would want to create that same type of programming, but teaching kids music, teaching kids about, production, teaching kids about writing, teaching kids about artistry, teaching kids about music business. So it's like there's these tangible things. I'm not sure what's available for young adults in that realm, but that was definitely something that me and my buddies were talking about, on how to engage youth after high school, because it's important that we put some kind of tools in their hands and teach them how to make money. You know what I mean? Because when you talk to kids, the underlying thing is, okay, all that is great, but how do I make money?
Mhm.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I like what you're saying. Oh, you're great, great, great. Okay, but how do I make money? Like, it comes back down to how do I make money, because most kids are trying to figure out life and they're on their own, or they're just diving out into the real world. Mom and dad are not giving you money anymore. You might not have a mom and dad. You might be a ward estate. You might be a group home child. You might be anything, but you're still trying to figure out what is next for you. And everybody's not going to go to college. Everybody's not going to be this scholarly student at a university. So some of these trades, we need to bring those trades back. You know what I mean? Bring
Yeah,
like real life hands-on plumber and flooring
carpenters
and
and
carpenter. We need
electricians.
to bring
Yeah.
those skill sets back to these schools to give kids other options. Like everybody's not gonna be the go to the Lakers. Everybody's not going to the Dodgers. Everybody's not gonna be, you know what I mean, and going to a college. So we got to give
That
kids other
I have
options.
to that is one of the things that came out from a tour that we did at in Hawthorne at SpaceX. SpaceX was talking about how they do not have enough electricians. They do not have enough painters,
Yeah,
people that are going into the trades to come in that they can hire. So they're thinking about launching their own sort of like university trade school that would allow people to come straight in out of high school
yeah.
and learn how to do these things that would then give them a life.
You know what? It seems like we're not even pushing or talking about these things anymore. It seemed like in the recent realm of education, we want kids to go to college. And I understand wanting kids to go to college, but every kid is not gonna go to college. Every kid doesn't want to go to college. Some kids want to dive directly into the thing that is of interest to them and create a career around it. Because I don't like when I go on to the high schools, I don't know if I remember auto mechanic back in the day. I don't think that's there anymore. I don't think there's carpenter class. I don't think there's any of
There used
these
to be a
things.
printing class. There used
Yeah,
to be printing.
I don't know if these things even exist anymore, but we want our kids to go get these loans to go to school, but we don't want to teach them these skills to survive. And I think we got to shift some of that energy into giving them real life application and skill sets.
I did want to go back just quickly about this, about businesses and a path for young adults. I mean, maybe that is something that we have a fairly engaged Chamber of Commerce up here in Altadena, and it's all business owners and all small business owners. So it would be a great program for them to be able to launch and sustain. So it's
Yeah,
not like an adjunct program, but
yeah,
something that's built into what they do. So it's something to talk to the president of the chamber, Doug Cauliflower, about.
yeah.
Okay, moving on. Let me keep going. Good job, Steve. One of the root issues of gang violence that was discussed in the film was the lack of intact families.
Wow.
Where in Pasadena can families access free resources and supports to keep keep families intact aside from churches?
I think I have to always go back to the Flint Ridge Center because there's so much there. They have resources for the formerly incarcerated. You know what I mean? For youth who are coming fresh out of jail who have no real direction. There's programs there. There's job fairs there. There's even help for kids to expunge their records. There's things for family. They have food banks for families who are struggling. They have so much stuff. And I love my brother Chris Finney in the movie because that's what he does. And like if you see him work in real life, he's phenomenal. He's always at Jackie Robinson Park, firing up the grill, feeding the community. He's always running around town, having conversations with some of these young brothers who are engaged in this gang activity, and we just need more brothers like him. But he's directly connected to the Flint Ridge Center, and because I see him, and I'm always collaborating in some kind of way with the Flint Ridge Center, I start to see that the Flint Ridge is a hub where all these things do exist. And I know that there's other things around the city because I love Day One. Day One really engages with the youth. I got to give Day One a shout out because Christy Zamani, who is the executive person over there, she made a donation for our opening night, along with um, the Flint Ridge Center, Mrs. Oh man, why did her name just slip me? She had passed away.
Aileen Mosley.
Oh, Jaylene. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Along with Jaylene Mosley, they gave us donations for us to do our opening night at the Limley Theater. So we had a great opening night to air our film on the big screen because of those two organizations. So they hold a special place for me, and I've watched them work, and they really get it done. And there's a lot of resources, and I think that's like for me, that's like going to be the first place that I would send people because if they don't have it, they know where to go next. You know what I'm saying? So
Chloe, will you drop a link to the Flint Ridge Center in the chat too? There's probably
Well,
people that
yes.
aren't even aware of it. Yeah.
Both
Yeah.
Flint Ridge Center links and Day One links are now in the chat.
Perfect. You're great. I just want to share all the love. Great program. This is one of the best programs I've seen. Love the initiative to make art that helps people. Lemonade from Lemons. Have there been any parent groups through schools that have segments that include a place for parents to share what they're experiencing with their children who seem at risk or already beginning to see early gang affiliation? So is there parent education? I mean, I know that there's parenting education classes through PCC that you can take through extension, but I'm not aware. I mean, I know that Penn offers some classes like that, but I'm not sure if at the high school level we're engaging parents on this topic specifically.
Yeah, I think, when in the educational world, this topic is not touched on directly. It's always like an addition to. I know that there's always IEP meetings, there's always SST meetings, there's always worrying about where your kid is at, if your kid is keeping up, if your kid is behind, and trying to do some preventative things. But I don't think talking with parents in regards to gang violence or prevention in regards to gangs, I don't think there's a thing. You know what I mean? I don't think there's a thing that really touches on that topic directly. And I don't know if it's fear out of talking about that, or if it's not politically correct to talk about that. But I think it is definitely that should be discussed.
And
Like,
I think it's something that we can approach the Family Resource Center about, because they do put out a lot of content. They do put out a lot of programs, one-off Saturday afternoon workshops, and something like that might be beneficial for them to consider doing again if it's something they haven't considered doing in a long time.
yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm gonna try to moving forward. I'm gonna try to take some inventory to see what's even available in the Altadena, Pasadena area in regards to this topic directly. Not,
Not around it.
yeah, not around it. But I don't think we're gonna come up with much. I'm not sure, but we'll see.
I think it's a good endeavor. I think it's a good endeavor for sure. Someone's asking if you think there'll be a pause now after all the activity, or is it just ramping up in Altadena? And I do just want to say that just from Thursday to Saturday, there were another couple of shootings, both on the east side of Altadena and in the northwest side of Altadena. I think what's of concern is the number of rounds that are being expended. I mean, they're counting 35 and 40 rounds, spent rounds in the middle of a street, and the cars and the buildings.
Right.
So
it means that youth have big guns. That is very scary. It's hard to say what will and won't happen, but what I do know is we're still in the middle of this thing. It's not subsiding yet. Like, I've got a chance to talk to the youngest person in my film recently, and he's just, when you're caught up in that life, you're just in it, and it's like I just kind of had to share a few words and just say, look, man, I just don't want to hear nothing bad happen to you. Think about your family when you're out here. And he's like, man, I appreciate all that. I appreciate that, but it's on. This is what I gotta do, and this is so. It's like I'm gonna do the big brotherly thing. I just happened to come across him, and he remembers me from doing the film, and I just want to share some light with him in the few moments that I had with him. And although I did, and he was very receptive to it, he's still in the mode of this is what's going on. Like, when your friends are recently killed, you're not thinking about peace. You know what I'm saying? So there's been a lot of deaths back and forth. So when these deaths go back and forth, it just fuels the situation, because now people are hurt and people are angry. So it's like the retaliation just keeps going. So I'm hoping that it will subside. But the fact that I just watched 3-4 funerals on live the last week, I highly doubt that right now is going to be one of those times where it's going to calm down. I think it's going to have to play out a little bit. And normally the summer is the hot time of the year,
I know.
right? So now summer's back around the corner. So I would just say, you know, we got to just kind of keep some mindfulness around where we're at and what we're doing. And if we have youth or kids, we need to inform them, like what Big John said in the film. Sometimes we got to let the kids know what's going on so they can be equipped instead of trying to hide and shelter them from the truth. Like they need to know what's happening so when they see things that are alarming, they know what they're recognizing versus being oblivious and running into something that probably could have been preventable.
Right. And I think that to this point, that there, you know, that the underpinning of this is this retaliatory nature, and that the um, until things get squared up between gangs and who's been killed on which side,
Right.
and getting, you know, that they're looking for shoring those things up. And so I think that until you know, I was talking to Captain Jacobs just about this. She was concerned over, you know, I know that there were some instances that occurred at one of the funerals this last week, from someone who was in Altadena that was being buried out east. And, you know, her concern was that we were going to have another Bloody Sunday because of the violence that occurred around this particular funeral. So I think that it's just important for people to understand that there's a mindset that's retaliatory in nature, and that if things get level set, then you might see things start to recede.
Yeah.
But until that happens, it's not going to happen.
This is why this gang thing hasn't been laid to rest, because when you have so much hurt on both sides for so long, it's hard to let it go. And then we have the next generation who are being introduced to this hurt, and now they're picking up where we left off, which we thought it was going to be, okay, that's it, that was the 90s, here we are, gang violence is over, Bloods and Crips are done, it's over. No, it's generational. Like some of these, like you watched in the film, it's talking about my grandfather was a gang member, my dad's a gang member, now I'm a gang member, and now some of the people who saying that I was a gang member, now they got kids. So sometimes these things just keep going. And like I said, I think it's hard to lay it to rest because there's been so much bloodshed that people are not willing to just fully say, okay, let it go.
Someone's asking, and I don't know the answer to this question, although I know that Deb Halberstadt is on, so she might know. But Altadena Sheriff's Department has had a youth engagement program in the past. Do you know if they're still running that program, or has funding for that gone away?
I don't know. I know what the Explorers might be Pasadena, and then there was one more that I know.
And let me see if Deb answered. She might answer later in the
I'm not sure what the Altadena has in regards to the youth programming, but I think so far, no, I think the longest running program that I do know in regards from law enforcement, it might be the PALS program or the Explorers program, but I think those are both Pasadena police.
related.
Yeah, but I know even with those programs, a lot of people are skeptical because they don't want to be so tied or so close to law enforcement. Sometimes it scares people. Because I remember when I was working at Longfellow, I remember the people coming trying to really recruit kids, and I remember the parents being reluctant because they just feel some kind of way in regards to their kids being with police officers, which, you know, we obviously, I know the police want that engagement to create, you know, because I think a lot of issues are centered around how the police engage the community. So I think that some of those programs probably will be a good idea if we can get families to be a part of it. But I don't think some of the families are weary in regards to being so close or connected to law enforcement.
This has been an educationally historic time. Perhaps we need to emphasize in our own minds that children may have learned some truly great life lessons, the sharing of which may prioritize testing, math, and reading. Perhaps schools will need to realize that grade levels are artificial constructs. Someone else says, well said, Steve. We have to invest in culturally rooted enrichment programs and structures that engage creativity, critical thinking, and physical practice, led by people of color, persons of color, artists, teachers, and facilitators, for sure.
Absolutely.
Someone's asking about a music program that's an organization that, is there a music program that an organization is using?
I'm not sure of the music programs currently. I do remember, I know some of the ones from schools. I know that there used to be a lot of music programs that would come and do presentations at schools. And I know some of the schools still have their like bands and, instrumentation. As a matter of fact, Miss Claja's been around for years.
And still around.
She's been around for years. I think, matter of fact, she was at Elliott when I went to Elliott. So Miss Claja's been around teaching kids music for years. And every time I see her, I just commend her and tell her how great she is and how much a part of the community she is. And maybe she doesn't realize it, but she's a huge part. And when you think of music in the school district, so good job to whoever hired her, and good job for hers to sticking around to see this. She's seen so many generation of teaching our youth how to play that's phenomenal. But I know what you guys are saying as far as music programs, like externally, I'm not sure about many of them.
I was trying to think of the gentleman that was on our call or on the meeting that Akona had, and he's a musician himself, and he's got his, now I'm spacing on his name, but he's here in Altadena. He's a jazz musician, I think, and he has sort of a musical group going, but I can't remember what it's called. People are saying green jobs.
What is green jobs?
I think there's things that are, Dorothy, did you want to, can you unmute Dorothy, Chloe? Go ahead.
Hi.
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Hi. Yeah, so green jobs, as climate change has been identified as a huge priority now in our world and our country. There's also now huge opportunity for jobs as we adapt to sort of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. So there's a lot of funding going out to water resilience. We're in like a 20-year drought right now. So that's literally millions and millions of dollars every year that the County of Los Angeles is also investing. And so yeah, green jobs are, focused on, getting off of fossil fuels and also resiliency efforts. So it's widespread. There's even a really cool group, I had forgotten their name, but they are partnering with the Forest Service right now. And they are doing trail maintenance up in the Angeles National Forest. And they're local to Pasadena. And they take a lot of, I think, formerly incarcerated or, young people trying to find jobs. So obviously, crazily enough, wildfire is also a big funding project. And then transportation, which I do a lot of advocacy in, is also a big investment. And then the other one that is standing before us now is park funding. So we just had an open grant come out, a competitive grant for $33 million from LA County. And I know it has to go far and wide, but maybe programs like I keep seeing, there's a couple of spaces, maybe we can have a skate park or a bike park and, different types of activities that don't, that are kind of more organic and open like that.
Thank you for sharing.
Thanks, Dorothy. I want to be sensitive to everyone's time. We've gone a little bit over, so we're going to wrap it up here in the next few minutes. We just have a few more things to get to. Deb did respond. She said the explorers are coming back to Altadena after a short hiatus to only Crescenta Valley, not Altadena. Deb, I'm not sure. So they're coming back, but through Crescenta Valley, not through Altadena, I think is what you mean. Karen Clagus has reported that despite the pandemic, children are engaged and performing. Hats off to her and her students. Music was an area that my students who had challenges were able to be successful. And it is one of the many arts that can be taught via Zoom. My son is learning the recorder completely via Zoom. His older brother learned it in school, but you can learn that and violin, and I'm going to have my older son start piano lessons. So music certainly important. Somebody did ask about that they're not hearing about solutions that will prevent deaths. Is it possible to get rid of guns?
I mean, that's like that would definitely is on a higher level of, what is that? Your Second Amendment? What is it? The right to bear arms? What is that?
Yep.
Right? That's a big thing, right? I think we've been trying to get rid of guns for how many years, but everyone seems to be obsessed with being able to be an owner. And I guess to a certain degree, we should be, but I guess it comes down to the laws that are in place to make it safe for us to have guns. I mean, for as long as I can remember, it's been a law that you can bear arms, right? So I think it comes down to the security of these guns. Where are these kids getting these guns from? You know what I mean? Like if every parent is abiding by the rule and you have your gun, it's not loaded and it's locked away in a locked case and the bullets are separate from the gun. I mean, there should be some challenges for kids to get to guns, but for some reason, these youth are coming across alarming guns, which are scary to think that our youth have access to these types of ammunition and firearms. So I think it really comes down to who's governing these guns and who's allowing these guns to sell. You know what I mean? I know it was I don't want to get too controversial, but I know within Pasadena, that whole gun running situation with one of the officers was alarming to people, because these are things that people assume happen. And then when they happen, we say, see, this the shit we talking about. And then people, oh, no, this doesn't happen. It does happen. It's documented. It's happened. We've seen it. People are rubbed the wrong way by it. And then you think, like, are things connected? I don't know. But in the end, who's governing these guns and who should be protecting these guns and how should it work and who should have them and who shouldn't, right? So I think that's going to be a higher up government type of situation to determine. I don't know. I'm not a fan of guns personally. If there was no guns, I think that would be great, because then no one could shoot each other.
Right, and you're gonna kill.
Like, if there's no guns, you shoot you. You take it. If you really had a problem with somebody, you go back to the old school primitive way and go fight it out and be friends later. You know what I'm saying? So,
but you're only gonna hurt that one person and not all these other.
Yes, you know what I mean. But yeah, I'm not a fan of guns, and I really wish there was a way to kind of really make it a very secure type thing. But I think, people are always going to get their hands on something they're not supposed to have somehow, some way.
I will say that there has been some recent success in Pasadena and Altadena with the recovery of guns that shouldn't be on the street. Mostly during, if you see something, say something kinds of events where sheriff or police are called in and then they recover the firearm from a vehicle or on the person or whatever. So I know that is happening. Can we touch on institutionalized racism that needs to change in order for lasting change? There was a comment above that said, let me go back to it real quick. I gotta scroll up here. It said, I think we need institutional changes, including changing history books, inclusiveness in our society, equal education in schools, ending racism, give everyone an equal chance in society, all the things that Dr. King fought for. How do we make these changes happen? What can individuals that have the power to end institutional racism do to help with these problems?
You know what? I think these things are slowly happening. Like, when we go back into history, we see the internal struggle from from those who come before us, people like Dr. King and Frederick Douglass and even Malcolm X, which he doesn't normally get his credit because of his approach. But we've seen the injustice. We've seen it time after time. Like I've been watching, you know, when you go back and watch these documentaries, the 13th Amendment, I was just watching one with Will Smith, Amend, you know, considering that Black folks weren't people, or 5/5 or whatever the percentage was, it just kind of rubs you the wrong way. It almost feels like the negativity of the past just got transformed into a new way of doing it. And then we all sit back and say, oh no, nothing's wrong with this. Like, if you can watch some of these old school documentaries and not feel like these things are wrong, then you probably are part of the problem, because it's not cool. And we see it. Like Pasadena wasn't always the most equitable city. You know what I'm saying? We see what's going on with the private schools. There was white flight that took place that we got the most private schools around. Why is that? Because we didn't want our kids going to school with your kids. So we're going to take our kids out of this school. The school district can struggle, and we're going to go on over here to our private schools and deal with that. Until we get it together and realize that we can coexist, then it's going to be a problem. Like there's some people who are attached to their old ways and don't see anything wrong. And if that's you, then you are persisting for the issue to be. But what I'm noticing is when you saw the uprising in the summertime with the Black Lives Matter, you saw a lot of support from our fellow brothers and sisters from all walks of life. I saw a lot of people. I went to several protests in Pasadena, from the police station, the city hall, and I saw more white folks, Latino folks, than I seen Black folks. And it was amazing to see, because what it did show is that over the time, we are getting tired of it collectively. People are coming to speak up. People from other nationalities are not okay with the BS. People are starting to see that it's wrong. And I think the more that we continue, because look, from where Dr. King was fighting to what me speaking right now, we've seen a lot of change. So what happens today moving forward, I'm hoping that we can see just as much change moving forward. But institutionalized racism is definitely real. A lot of people don't believe that term and think it's something that's made up. But yeah, everybody's not getting the same opportunities, from schooling to housing to loans to banking to where they live. It's not the same.
I do want to say that it's Paul Livingston from Soul Force Project. Thank you, Paul. Paul didn't chime in, but that was his name, and I couldn't remember. That was the music group that we were talking about. Folks are saying laws similar to what Australia has would help curb gun violence. That is true, although Americans have shown time and time again that they're not there yet with the willingness to give up the guns that they have and or secure them properly across the country. They want to be able to carry them on their person, and that's a problem of its own.
Personally, if we took away guns, then we need to take it away across the board. Like, the citizens can't be taking guns from, but then the police have guns. So if we're not gonna have guns, then no one.
Everybody doesn't have guns.
Like, let's be all on the same playing field. You know what I mean? Like, just the thing that pisses you off, like when you see these video after videos of people dying and getting killed, and most of them are Black, you just kind of see like, we really could have approached this differently. Like, I've seen stuff like, why are you shooting when you could clearly tase this dude? Or why are you shooting when you can clearly just slam him on the ground one time, cuff him up and drag him in? Like, why are we so quick to shoot? Like, everybody is scary all of a sudden. And it doesn't make sense when you see officer after officer after officer after officer all standing around with a gun, and there's just one person who's not armed and they leave shot. Like, come on. Like, you could clearly run up on this kid, boop, 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 slam, take him on in, tase gun, take him on in. Like, I don't know. I think sometimes, like, I swear to God, with the George Floyd, the officer that was on his neck, I swear to you, I saw some enjoyment in his face with his knee on this dude's neck. I swear I saw it. I swear, I'm looking at it and I'm like, I feel like he's trying to apply more pressure. Like, this dude is dying. Like, he's on the ground. He can't do anything. Let him, lock him up, take him on down. But to stay on it, like, come on, like, this is not fair. This is not okay. Like, we could do better as people. We can do better methods of detaining people. We can do better methods of applying force. And when you start killing people, it almost feels like a slap in the face because it's starting to happen more and more and more on camera. Just imagine of all the shit that took place that we never saw, or the people who fall for their lives and no one will ever know or believe them. Like, you gotta know. And now we're seeing it in our faces, and
We still don't
people are,
believe them.
and they're walking there. You see, we see people dying all the time in our faces, and we see people walking. So it doesn't really make us have this trust into law enforcement that law enforcement wants everyone to have. Like, everyone doesn't have that same trust. Like, for me growing up, you know, because I have an African American father, my father was very weary. He was like, son, you got to be careful. You don't want to give them no reason to talk to you. If you know, you be respectful as you can. You want to make it home. And I'm like, you know, why is my father talking to me like this? Every kid doesn't feel like this, because some kids are like, oh, there goes the police. Hi, Mr. Officer. They're great. They're so wonderful. Yeah. But I was fearful and still am sometimes. But it's just the dynamics. Like, everything is not the same for everyone. And I really want people to understand and know that. Like, just because the police may have been great to you and half your family was police and you abide by the blue, that's wonderful. And you share that experience, and that's your experience to have. But you just got to know that that's not the same for everyone.
I think there's a lot of comments that are in the chat, and links to things. And I think that we can make some of this available after this. I think I'm going to give this to the last question here. We're at 3:33, and our classes on race acceptance between Latinos and Blacks, are there classes almost like team building, but in a school? Would that help?
Team building with Latino and Black kids? Wait, I'm confused.
Yeah, I think that what she's saying is that if we've got these issues that are between the Latino gangs and the Black gangs, are there any sort of integration efforts that are happening, or programs that happen for school age kids that might prevent them from continuing to harbor those feelings against each other?
I don't know, but I doubt if something like that exists. And I'm not even sure if I would recommend for that to exist, because in the early stages of kids being kids, like, engaged, because kids, when I'm on the playground, when school is in, I'm the behavior specialist at Normal Coombs Elementary. So when school is in, I'm watching all kids play, right? These kids have no real knowledge of race and thinking someone's inferior of the other. They're having a ball playing together with each other. So I'm not going to pull two kids aside like, hey, you guys realize that there's a black and brown beef going on in the streets and we need to come together. Like, they are already having fun being kids. We need to let them be kids. Now, can we talk about gang violence as a whole? Absolutely. But I don't think I would start to segregate it and say, Black folks is having problems with the Latino folks and gang violence in our neighborhoods, and what do you guys think about it? I don't think I would do that. Like I said, I watch these kids play every day. They play with each other, having fun and playing different sports games, board games, holding hands, skipping every day without thinking that there's a problem, because in their minds, they're just friends at school and they probably don't really understand or think there's a difference. So I wouldn't strip them of their innocence to draw that to their attention. I just think that, you know, by middle school, we could start having maybe some little more detailed conversations. But like in the elementary setting, I think we'll just let them live and be kids. You know what I mean? Like, we're always trying to force kids to grow up. Let's let them be a little bit. But I think by middle school, we could probably have a more guided conversation around race, inequalities, community awareness, gang violence, police engagement. Like, those things start to be a little more present because kids are starting to get introduced to them.
I wanted to just wrap up by saying I thank everyone for giving so much of their time on a Sunday. I think, you know, we have had many meetings and conversations and workshops around this. And as we've always been saying, there's a lot of room for many voices and many ways to have these conversations, and they're all sort of just a beginning or a continuation of the conversation.
Yeah.
I appreciate those that are here today that want to be involved and want to figure out a way to become involved, and we will circulate the resources after this, and you'll have the link to the documentary so that you can access them at any time. Any last parting words, Steve, before we go?
You know what? I just want to thank you guys for allowing me time and space to share this film. It was a passion project. This thing was made with love. Like, this was a real passion project. We didn't make this to make money. We didn't make this to become famous. We made this really to be a tool, to be a voice, and to really share with the community. And I'm very proud of it because it covered so much. Like, in the beginning, I considered this film a gang film, but after I watched it so many times and I talked to people and collaborations have been built and people have called me saying, who was that brother that spoke in the beginning? I want to invite him out. And who was that sister who talked? And like, there's been so many intertwining pieces because of this film that now it's a community film. It's no longer a gang film. It's a community film. It touches on so much and I'm so proud of it. And I thank you guys for having me. If anybody wanted to support, you guys could come on, go to my website and purchase apparel. You guys can feel free to circulate and share the film. It's a great conversation starter. There's a lot of people in Pasadena, Altadena that don't even have a clue that gang violence exists in our city. So I love sharing this type of information with them because it's so mind-blowing where you can live right down the street and have an idea that this stuff is happening in your own backyard.
I think that a lot of folks know a lot more now just because of how things have played out and how we are living, with each other in our own neighborhoods. So I thank you again for your time. I thank the library for hosting. Thank you so much, Chloe. I see you there. And thanks for everyone who stayed on until the end. And Steve, I look forward to our future collaborations and all the things that we can do to help stem this tide in this community.
Yeah, thank you guys, man. I'm so happy. I know 90 minutes was long for everybody to sit through, but I definitely appreciate
it was worth it.
Hanging on. I appreciate you guys hanging on.
All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and thank you so much. I see you, Veronica. Thank you.